thinking of visiting Bali? In this video, I'll share some tips we picked up from our family's recent trip to Bali, including where to stay, how to get around, what to eat, and what to do there. And in the description below, I'll link to our full vlog from this trip so you can experience it alongside us. First things first, how do you get to Bali? As far as I know, there aren't any airlines currently that offer direct flights to Bali from the US, but there are plenty of ways to get to Bali from here with just a single connection. Options out of New York include Emirates, Qatar Airways, Turkish Airlines, Singapore Airlines, Korean Air, and China Airlines. Options out of Los Angeles include EVA Air, Philippines Airlines, China Airlines, and Singapore Airlines. Our family, though, took a bit of a roundabout way to get to Bali. Last summer, we saw a great fare sale for ANA's The Room, so we jumped on it. We flew from New York to Tokyo, and then from Tokyo to Jakarta. And then we flew AirAsia, which is a Malaysian low-cost airline, from Jakarta to Bali. If you'd like to watch our review of flying ANA's The Room, I'll link that below. Bali is a pretty big island, so the first thing you're going to need to decide is which area you're going to make your home base. Spoiler alert, we decided to stay in Ubud, and I'll tell you more about that. But before I do, let me run down some of the other popular areas and give you an idea of what each one is like. Now, keep in mind that we didn't stay in these areas, so we don't have first-hand experience of them. I'm really basing these descriptions on what I've heard from other travelers, so you should definitely do your own research as well. Kuta is really popular, especially with Australian tourists, and my understanding is that it's very developed, quite touristy, and has a little bit of a Cancun-esque party vibe. Seminyak is another popular area of Bali. This is a little more upscale and refined than Kuta, and where you'll find a lot of luxury resorts. A lot of travelers also like staying in Canggu. It's more laid back than Seminyak and has a strong surf and yoga culture. And of course, there are many areas in and near Bali that are more off the beaten path. I've heard travelers rave about the Gili Islands, Nusa Penida, Munduk, and Ahmed. Also, many travelers are starting to stay in Lombok and actually skipping Bali altogether. So you definitely have a lot of options depending on the vibe that you want. As I mentioned, we decided to stay in Ubud. Ubud is considered to be the cultural capital of Bali. This is a place renowned for its temples, but it's also known to have the best practitioner of various Balinese arts, everything from dance to sculpture to textile design. One advantage of staying in Ubud is that it's fairly centrally located within the island, which makes it easy to do day trips to other parts of Bali. One disadvantage is that Ubud is inland, so you'll have to travel far to find a beach. The great thing about Ubud, though, is that no matter what your budget is, you're going to find accommodations that will work for you. If you don't want to spend too much, there are guest houses and hostels. If you love luxury resorts, as do we, you'll find properties from incredible brands like Four Seasons, Ritz-Carlton, and Aman. And if you prefer vacation rentals, there are tons of beautiful villas you can book. We booked our villa through Airbnb, and it was a great home base from which to explore Ubud and beyond. We had 4 bedrooms, each with an ensuite bathroom, a spacious living dining area, a full kitchen, an outdoor massage bed, and a stunning private pool overlooking the rice fields. The villa had an indoor-outdoor feel, but the great thing was that every room was fully enclosed, so we could keep the creepy crawlies out, and the air conditioning in. And that's an important tip for Bali. Indoor-outdoor living may look really aesthetic in photos, but Bali is a destination with a lot of big bugs and other jungly wildlife. So it's best to book a villa where the main rooms can be fully closed off. Another thing we loved about this villa is that we had a butler assigned to us who acted as our concierge. Not only did he help with arranging services at the villa, everything from private chefs to massage therapists, but he also helped us arrange off-site services like scooter rentals, airport drop-off and pickup, and more. I really wish more vacation rentals offered end-to-end services like these, because it really felt like the perfect blend of the hotel and rental experience rolled into one. And we paid just $350 per night. Let's talk about how to get around Bali. Honestly, transport here is a real pain point. Ubud itself doesn't have any type of public transport at all. Most people get around by scooter, so of course that's your first option, to rent a scooter. But I'd only recommend doing that if you already have a good amount of experience driving scooters. Serge and I had never driven scooters before this trip. I expected that driving a scooter wouldn't be that different from, say, operating an ATV or a snowmobile, but I was so wrong. One big difference is that you need to balance on 2 wheels on a scooter, which means that you have to maintain a certain amount of speed, and I just did not feel comfortable at all. The roads in Ubud are so narrow, and it's a steep 1 or 2 foot drop on either side straight into a rice field. And once you get to the main roads, there's so much traffic and it's pretty chaotic. I really didn't feel confident driving the scooters, especially not with our daughters riding behind us. So even though we had rented scooters, we abandoned that plan and ended up returning them. If you're coming to Bali with kids especially, it's honestly best to get around by car. But you do not want to drive yourself. Again, the roads are extremely narrow and most of them are one-way only. And driving a car here takes a lot of skill and experience that visitors are just not going to have. The good news is, it's pretty affordable to hire a driver in Bali. You can expect to pay an average of maybe $50 US per day for up to 10 hours. Obviously, that price will go up or down depending on how big or small or new or luxurious the car is. This trip was heavy on content capture for us, so about half the days we were in Bali, we were with our local photographer Sonny, who was able to drive us around. And then we also spent a couple days with our guide Dipta, who also had a car that he could drive us around in. So if you're going to be working with a private tour guide or a photographer, they'll typically be able to handle the transport for you. By the way, I'll link below to both Sonny and Dipta's socials. I highly recommend them both. Alternatively, the place you're staying in, whether it's a rental or a hotel, they should be able to arrange a driver for you. Now, you may be wondering, isn't Uber an option? And unfortunately, no, there's no Uber in Bali. There are 2 different all-in-one apps. One is called Gojek and one is called Grab. And there you can hail rides and order food. More on the food later. But every time we tried to order a car through one of these apps, there either weren't any available or the drivers would just cancel on us. It seems like these apps really work best if you just want to call a scooter ride, where you'd be riding solo behind the driver. But obviously, as a family of 4, that's not a great option for us. Now let's talk about food. One thing you do not have to worry about is going hungry in Bali. There are so many restaurants everywhere with all types of cuisines. And something I really loved is that it's so easy to get food delivered to our villa. We live in New York City, so we're used to getting everything delivered, from groceries to dry cleaning to meals. So to us, this really felt like home. One thing to know though is that it's always cash on delivery. The app Grab supposedly allows you to use credit cards, but we found that anytime we tried, the restaurant would just cancel our order. So cash is definitely king in Bali. Now when we travel, we prefer to mostly eat whatever the local food is. Because, you know, that's half the fun of travel. Plus, it's usually gonna taste better than just about any other cuisine you're gonna find there. And Indonesian food is so good. Seriously, I don't think I ate a single thing that I didn't enjoy here. So which Indonesian or Balinese dishes should you try? This is obviously not an exhaustive list, but here are some of the dishes we enjoyed the most, and ones that are widely available throughout Bali. Nasi goreng. This Indonesian fried rice you'll be able to find at breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Satay. Basically, meat skewers. I'm sure you've had these before. Beef rendang. This is more of a specialty in Java, but you'll find it in Bali too. Sop buntut. Oh my god, this was my absolute favorite. Hopefully I didn't butcher the pronunciation. It's oxtail soup, and wow, Indonesians really know how to make some deeply flavorful soup. Nasi campur ayam. This is basically a mixed plate, usually consisting of chicken or pork with some vegetables and sides. Jajanan pasar. These are Balinese traditional cakes, and there's a huge variety of them. My favorite one is klepon. It's kind of like a Balinese gusher. You bite into it and then some liquid will explode out. It's so good. But the one Balinese specialty you absolutely cannot miss is babi guling. This is roast suckling pig, and it's so delicious. We actually have a whole video about the street food we ate in Bali, which I'll link below. But if for whatever reason you don't love Indonesian food that much, you'll find plenty of Western food here as well. 2 popular restaurants in Ubud are Clear Cafe and Sayan House. I have to admit that I actually didn't love the food at Clear Cafe, but you can't deny how gorgeous the space is. There's quote-unquote regular food on the menu, but Clear Cafe is especially known to be good for vegans and vegetarians. Sayan House is a more upscale restaurant overlooking the rice terraces, and this was a really memorable meal. Not only was the setting absolutely stunning, but the Japanese Latin fusion food here is really delicious, so I definitely recommend eating here. Okay, so now that you've figured out where to stay and how you're gonna get around, what are you going to do during your time in Bali? Well, the good news and bad news is there is an abundance of things to do. Seriously, I've never been to a destination where I've looked up what Airbnb experiences there were, and I literally could not get to the bottom of the list, no matter how far down I scrolled. So the good news is, there's lots to do. The bad news is, there's just no way to do it all, so you'll probably have some FOMO about what you're gonna miss. So let me run down some of our favorite experiences from this trip. First, you have to explore the iconic rice terraces. These are some of Bali's most famous landscapes, and they are so stunning in real life. Tegallalang Rice Terrace is probably the most famous one in Ubud. One thing to note is that all of this land is owned by individual farmers, and if you'll be shooting photos or video on their property, they may ask you for a fee, typically about $10 per person. So bring some cash with you, and please be respectful because again, they are doing you the favor of allowing you to be a guest on their property. Very close by is the Abian Desa Rice Terrace, and this is more of a built-out tourist attraction, and it's where you'll be able to ride in one of these Instagram-famous giant swings. This experience is actually so much fun. First, you realize that it's the ultimate Instagram versus reality moment. On Instagram, this looks so serene and peaceful. In reality, it's more like this. And it's actually kind of a thrill ride. The swing is so long and you go up so high that you have to wear a safety harness. If you want to be extra, you can rent a flying dress like our daughter Sean did here. But just know that these dresses are not going to smell minty fresh.
How does that dress smell?
Like sweaty man pits.
You can also do ziplining here, which our daughters enjoyed a lot as well. One place we really enjoyed visiting was the Ulun Danu Baraton temple. This temple was built on Bali's second largest lake, and it's absolutely stunning. This location is pretty far up into the mountains, so the air feels really crisp and fresh. It's a great getaway, especially from the busyness of downtown Ubud. You can rent rowboats and pedal boats here to explore the lake, and there's also a nice little playground for kids. Not too far from this temple is the Handara gate. I gotta be honest, it's just a photo op and nothing more. But if you want to avoid the crazy long lines at the famous Pura Luhur temple and still get a similar photo of this Heaven's Gate structure, you can come here instead. This is actually a gate that leads into the entrance of a golf course and resort. But it's become such a popular photo spot that they now charge you to take pictures here. It's the equivalent of about $2 US per person. And if you want to use a drone, it's about $7 US. So bring some cash with you for this. Another thing that's really fun, especially with kids, is visiting the famous monkey forest in Ubud. Here you'll find hundreds of monkeys roaming around a jungle right by downtown Ubud. Make sure you follow all the safety rules because these monkeys can get aggressive. Also, don't miss out on the monkey selfie experience. There's an extra fee of about $3 US, but it's so worth it to get a photo like this. There's actually a special trick they use to make it look like the monkey is taking the selfie with your phone, but it's a really fun souvenir. Now, another experience we really enjoyed was visiting the Tirta Impul, and this is one of the famous water temples in Ubud. This place is really ancient, and they have this water purification ceremony that locals come to do here. And the amazing thing is that even as a visitor, you're able to actually participate in this experience. So when you first enter the grounds of the main temple, they'll give you a sarong to change into. But this is really only temporary to just walk around the temple. Then when you're getting ready to get into the water, they'll actually give you a completely separate sarong, this green sarong with a red belt. And this is the one that you actually wear to enter the water. So there's a series of water spouts, and you basically bow and then put your head under the water of each one, and you go through them one by one from left to right. And what made this experience really special for me is that very often when you visit ancient sites, you'll hear about the ceremonies that used to be done there. But when you come here, not only is the ceremony still practiced, but you as a foreigner, as a visitor, actually get to participate in it. And I think that's just really unique. If you enjoy street food, definitely do a street food tour while you're in Bali. Our guide Dipta is a real expert on Balinese food, and we had a great time learning all about it from him. He took us to try one of Bali's best Bali Guling restaurants, and we explored the night market together, trying all kinds of delicious dishes, drinks, and desserts. I'll link Dipta's info below, along with the video we made on Balinese street food. So for this trip, we decided to take a deliberately slow and easy approach to our itinerary. That way we could balance content creation and exploring and just straight up relaxation. That said, if I were to do this trip over again, I would probably have shuffled our schedule around to prioritize a few specific activities. One, I would have loved to take a Balinese cooking class. Cooking classes are always a fun activity to do with kids, and you learn so much about a culture by cooking its food. Also, my girls love all things arts and crafts, so I also wish we'd made the time to take a batik making class. Batik is a fabric dyeing process using a wax resist technique that's really sort of specialized in Indonesia. I think my girls would have really enjoyed trying that out. Going to watch a fire dance is another thing that I wish we had done. The most famous place to do this is at Uluwatu Temple. They do this at sunset and it overlooks the water and it's supposed to be really spectacular. And finally, Ubud has a lot of cool day clubs. Think beach clubs, but instead of a beach, it's a pool. To be honest, I just wasn't too sure what the policy was when it came to kids. I heard conflicting things about whether kids were allowed or at what age, so we ended up not doing it. So a cooking class, batik making class, fire dance, and visiting a day club, those are the things that I wish we had done on this trip. And then there are some things that we deliberately decided not to do, either because it was too adventurous for us, or it involved too much hiking for our kids, or because he had to wake up insanely early, none of which we really wanted to do on what was supposed to be a lazy, relaxing trip. But you should absolutely look into doing these things when you're in Bali because you're probably much more ambitious than us. Number 1, waterfalls. There are so many beautiful waterfalls throughout Bali, so you should go see one. Number 2, volcano hike. Hiking Mount Batur and watching the sunrise from here is an iconic thing to do in Bali, so definitely add that to your list. Number 3, Nusa Penida. This is a small island off the coast of Bali, and it has some absolutely breathtaking beaches and landscapes. People usually do this as a day trip. Number 4, swimming with dolphins. Our friends at the channel Let's Go Fernway, which, by the way, if you haven't watched their channel before, please do because they make absolutely amazing family travel videos that are really more like movies than videos. Anyway, one of their favorite experiences in Bali was swimming with dolphins in the wild. I believe you do this in a place called Lovina, but if you do a search on swimming with dolphins in the wild in Bali, you should be able to find info on that. So one of the top questions I got from viewers was, how do you avoid Bali belly? If you haven't heard this term before, it basically refers to the fact that many travelers to Bali end up experiencing some type of gastrointestinal discomfort or worse. Use your imagination. Now, just so you know, many people consider the phrase Bali belly to be offensive, so I don't really recommend using that. Let's be real, food poisoning can hit you anywhere in the world, including in the US, so it's not like Bali has any special claim to that. Anyway, we had zero gastro issues while we were in Bali, fortunately. We were really careful when it came to tap water. We obviously didn't drink it, but we actually even avoided using it for brushing our teeth, and we did that with filtered water instead. We also avoided any raw salads, since the vegetables are usually washed with tap water, which can still be present in the salad. We did have some Indonesian salads, but those are all made with vegetables that have been pre-cooked, so that wasn't an issue. Ice cubes are another potential source of problems, but to be honest, we had quite a few drinks with ice cubes in them and we had no issues. So I think it's a good idea to avoid ice, but many reputable restaurants are probably using filtered water to make their ice cubes. Another question I got from many viewers was, how were the bugs? To be honest, I was really concerned about the bug situation as well. Our oldest daughter, Sean, is one of those people who just always gets bitten the worst out of all of us. And I'd heard that the bugs were pretty serious in Bali. But again, we actually didn't have too many issues here with bugs. I mentioned earlier that we deliberately booked a villa where all the rooms can be fully enclosed, and we were careful to keep doors closed to keep the bugs out. Plus, we were diligent with using insect repellent spray on ourselves and reapplying throughout the day. We checked a bag for this trip, so we were able to bring our own. We primarily used these two brands. They both contain DEET, so they're pretty heavy duty and they worked really well. I'll link both of them below. If you prefer to avoid DEET, you might try these Mosquito Bracelets, which we traveled with as well. And I've heard that washing your body with citronella soap helps repel bugs naturally too. I'll link the bracelets and the citronella soap below in case you want to pick those up. So now that I've shared some tips on where to stay and what to do in Bali, I also want to talk about some issues travelers should be aware of. These are things I only learned when I got to Bali, but they're things that you should know. First, Bali has become so popular that there's definitely starting to become an over-tourism problem. Ubud itself, for example, is clearly a small town that was never designed to hold the hordes of visitors and foreign residents the way it is now. Travelers are drawn to Ubud for its famous rice fields, and many people like us book villas overlooking those rice fields. The problem is that so many rice fields have been turned into villas, that Bali, which was once a rice bowl of Asia, now actually has to import some of its rice. Also, most Airbnb villas are owned by foreigners, not locals. So locals often don't even end up benefiting financially from this tourism. Also, Balinese locals have become really fed up recently with foreigners who disrespect the local culture and laws. Foreigners will often drive scooters without a helmet and then argue with cops who write them a ticket for this infraction. We saw it happen multiple times just in the short time we were in Bali. But foreigners have also been extremely disrespectful at sacred sites, doing things like taking lewd or even naked photos at places that have religious significance. It's gotten so bad that the government is considering revoking visa on arrival for travelers, especially those from Russia and Ukraine, who are among the worst offenders. Does this mean you shouldn't go to Bali? Not necessarily, but think about ways you can spend your money so that locals will actually benefit. Staying in a locally owned guest house is one way, but also hiring local guides and photographers whom you pay directly is another thing you can do. And just as with any destination you visit, please remember that you are a guest. You are not entitled to be there, you are being graciously allowed in. So express your appreciation and always show respect. As I mentioned earlier, no matter what type of food you enjoy, you're bound to find restaurants in Bali that you like. But Bali also has a pretty incredible street food scene. And there's one absolutely delicious street food that is totally unique to Bali. Check out this video where I show you what it is and why it's a must-try when you come to Bali.